codes for Truth Against the Machine, and we are going to be interviewing Mary McIntyre, who is a candidate for school board. First thing that you should know is that we're both teachers. I'm a New York City school teacher, and I do a little bit of blogging and reporting on the side. And Mary is a, well, why don't you tell us, Mary, you're a school teacher where?
Yeah, in Albemarle County, Virginia, which is where Charlottesville is. It's the home of UVA.
Mhm.
And if you're not sure where Charlottesville is, it's about an hour west of Richmond, which is the capital, and maybe 2 hours away from Washington, D.C.
Right on. So we met about 2 weeks ago at a march, a DC rally, where there was a couple of hundred people marching for public education. They had speeches by Betsy DeVos and against Betsy DeVos by the head of the NEA, Lily Eskelsen Garcia. And we were attracted to each other. I think I was wearing my BAT t-shirt, my Badass Teachers t-shirt. So we're both members of the Badass Teachers Association. Yeah. For any teachers or public education supporters, you might want to check that out and join that great group. You had a sign that said teachers should run for office, which definitely caught my eye. And we got to talking, and so it turns out you're running for school board on a county-wide seat in Albemarle County. And
it's a district seat. Yeah, we have 6 districts in our county, and there's one at-large position. So this is for my district.
Okay, so this is a school board for the school district. And if anybody's watching this and you're in the school district, you have a lot of power here because you can actually vote in this race, and you can find out here from one of the candidates her positions, and we'll also talk about your opponent. So let's get into it. This is a race, I believe you said, between 2 Democrats, right?
Yes. The incumbent is not running for re-election. She's had the seat for 16 years, and the incumbent is a moderate Republican. And she's just decided to step down, and she had originally run because she had children in the schools, which is one of my main motivations. I have children in the public schools too. So when I found out the incumbent wasn't going to run for re-election, I was really interested in the position. But yes, there are 2 Democrats running for the seat. Now, you run as an independent. It doesn't say on the ballot what you are. So really, the voters will have to know us and be able to distinguish the 2 of us from each other. And so while we may think that we're competing for the Democrats' vote, we're competing for every single vote.
Right, anybody can vote, and they'll just be, so what's interesting about Virginia, which is different from New York, in New York, our school districts have special elections, and so there's like no turnout. Right, people do not vote in this. Like maybe 2,000 people, 3,000 people might vote in a school district. Here, you're going to be on the primary. It's going to be during the election for all of the candidates, right? All the up-ticket candidates.
That's right. It's the general election, which is November the 7th. And on the ballot this year is the governor, the lieutenant governor, Commonwealth's attorney, and the entire House of Delegates for the whole state. So it's also within our county, we will have some candidates for the Board of Supervisors. So really, we will have a decent amount of voter turnout for an off year. We call it an off year if it's not a presidential year. So yeah, I mean, it's good that they do that with the school board race, so we make sure we get a lot more interest.
Right, that's great. And the governor's race is getting a lot of attention in Virginia, right? This is Terry McAuliffe already?
Terry McAuliffe he's term limited, so he's not running for re-election. And the Democrat nominee is Ralph Northam, and the Republican nominee is Ed Gillespie. And so, yeah, there's a lot of momentum right now in the Northam camp, and really trying to get out the vote as much as possible. We really have, it's just absolutely necessary that we keep a governor who is a Democrat, because our legislature at the state level is controlled by the Republicans due to gerrymandering. And so because of that, we've had a lot of legislation put forward over the last few years that has had to be vetoed by the governor in order to stop it. And a lot of it had to do with bringing in for-profit charter schools and things like that. And so luckily, he's been able to stop that. So that's why it's so important that Ralph Northam wins this governor's race.
Right. Okay. So that's a great point. They're holding the line in Virginia. Guys in Kentucky, they just signed a new charter school law that's going to be able to just close public schools and open up charter schools. So
Yep.
this is good information coming out of Virginia. So let's zero in on your race right now.
Yep.
It's going to be two Democrats, and there's no Republican running. So this looks like it'll be a flip seat. But sometimes the issues aren't really partisan. It's really just about bread and butter stuff. So what are the differences between you and your candidate? And again, this is Mary McIntyre running for school board. And what's the name of your opponent, and and what would be the big contours of the race?
Sure. My name is Mary McIntyre, and if you'd like to find out more about me, I have a Facebook page, Mary McIntyre for Albemarle County School Board. And my opponent's name is Katrina Carlson. She is in her early 30s, and she taught 2 years for Teach for America at a KIPP school in Massachusetts, and then went to UVA Law School, and since then has been a stay-at-home mom. To my knowledge, I don't believe she's practiced law. But the big differences between the two of us are just that I have significantly more education experience. I started teaching in 2003. I taught in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that's when I met and married my husband, who was in the Air Force. And so we started traveling the world for the military. And that means I haven't had a traditional teaching career. It was always 1 year here, 2 years there, and I was constantly having to resign and look for new positions. I've never earned tenure anywhere. The only place I've been a member of a teachers union was actually in the Department of Defense schools when I taught in Germany, and that ended up being a huge deal for me, because the union really helped me out in a situation, which I could tell you about if you want to know. But that's the main difference, is just having that experience as a teacher in classrooms in public schools has given me just such a strong knowledge of educational policy. I've been an employee here in Albemarle County, so I already have this connection with the community and with the teachers. I think I could really represent them and what their needs are the best. So, I don't have a law degree. I don't have a degree from an Ivy League university, but I don't think that that's necessary to be a really powerful and effective school board member.
Right. So for folks that are listening, a lot of times, the people that set education policy have never taught in a classroom. And
Yeah.
I think as a teacher, I'm only teaching 10 years, but I can tell you that it's really important to know how kids learn and what is helping and what is not helping in terms of policy from the state level, federal level. Part of the frustration in classrooms right now is that there are all of these federal mandates, state mandates that make absolutely no educational sense. And you really need to turn to the parents in the community at school board meetings and say, hey, look, this is working, this is not working, and we need to do A, B, and C. So it's great to have experienced educators in there, and so that's something that it sounds like you bring. Your opponent was a charter school teacher, and I don't hold anything against charter school teachers or parents, but the really big knock, of course, on charter schools is that they allow privatization, which includes for-profit management companies, and charter schools often cherry pick their students in order to rig the outcomes, and then they compare themselves to the public schools where they don't have an application to a lottery. So it's great to hear that Virginia doesn't have a charter school law, and that you guys are holding the line, and that this is going to be a big part of the governor's race. But also when it filters down to the local school district, you have a lot of other privatization, attacks that hit our schools. So moving on from charter schools, what are some of the other privatization problems that we see? For example, do you have a really big opt-out movement, or do you have a growing opt-out movement refusing the test because the Common Core test or whatever they have in Virginia are for-profit outside vendors that are paid very, very handsomely to provide the tests, create the tests, and then score the tests, and they just get, you know, rich, taking away money from the public school budgets. And you know, those are federal mandates and sometimes state mandates that come in. And at the district level, right, in a school board meeting, these things come up all the time. So how does that affect your raise?
Well, I do want to clarify first. We have charter schools in Virginia, but we only have 9 in the entire state. And the reason is that we have very strict regulations for those charter schools here, that they have to be under the supervision of a local school board.
Right.
So most charter management organizations do not want to be under the supervision of a school board. They also, here in Virginia, have to meet all of the same requirements that all of the public schools do, including the testing requirements. And they cannot be for profit. So when you put those things together, it really manages to protect us from what we're seeing in the state right next door in North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina, and my sister is a teacher in a public school there. And the charter movement is just decimating public education, their budget, their teachers, and their entire community. So I do feel very lucky that we have that in place to protect us here in Virginia. But as I was saying before, the state legislature could change that at any time. And so it's really important that we pay attention to not just local races, but state level races and national issues as well. So yes, we do have charters, but not to the extent that other places do. So here in Virginia, we did not adopt Common Core. We created something similar called the Standards of Learning, the SOLs, and right? How appropriate. And so at the end,
I'm not going there.
Yes, the students take the SOL tests, and the level of testing is really just over the top. The amount of tests, when you add them all up, how many tests the students are taking by the end of their senior year, it's just amazing. And so actually this year, the State Board of Education has recommended to reduce the number of SOL tests that students will take, not significantly, but it's a good start. I think that we, in general, as a state, are moving toward a more innovative education model where we're going to work for other methods of assessment, that things like portfolio assessment and assessment that actually measures student progress over time versus just a pass-fail on a test. So, you know, there has not been here in Albemarle County, to my knowledge, a huge opt-out movement.
Right.
That's not to say that it wouldn't happen in the future if more parents found out about it. I think that a lot of parents don't know that they have options, and that's the way that a lot of people want to keep it, because they want that data from the test so that they can push for accountability between schools, for sure, but also there are some people who really want accountability of teachers as well. They want to be able to, for instance, pay you based on how many students are going to pass the test. And
financial incentives.
Right. I am completely against that for a lot of reasons. But so yes, those are the issues that are going on right now, state and locally, as far as standardized testing.
And do you know your opponent's views on education reform? I mean, you know, are they advocating for anything? What's the platform of your opponent?
It's been kind of hard to figure that out. It has not been as put forward as I have, or as vocal about it as I have been. I'm not really sure, since her only teaching experience was in a KIPP school.
Right. By the way, for folks, KIPP is one of the biggest national charter networks.
Right.
And they are known, perhaps not in Virginia, but they're known for their no excuses policy.
Right.
Where the only thing that matters is the scores that result on math and ELA, which are only 2 subjects. And that's brought a lot of criticism about, narrowing curriculum, not focusing on the whole child. not being realistic, not looking at, you know, the student's language or poverty status or disability status, etc.
Right,
So,
right.
if she's coming from a KIPP background, she's probably, you know, had the general teacher indoctrination where they want to go in and just push those kids to, you know, to do well on bubble tests at any expense.
Sure, and I do want to clarify that I don't think that anyone goes in to teach for America or to teaching in a charter school with ill intentions. You know, I think that for sure they go in with good intentions and wanting to help students and wanting to change public education for the better. I just think that the process of how that works and how that is implemented doesn't actually benefit public education as a whole. You may have done a really great job in your classroom with your particular group of students in your particular charter school, but the fact of the matter is the lowest performing schools and the lowest performing students don't need the rookies of the team. They need, you know, high quality professionals with many years of experience. They need the best of the best. And so that's one of my main concerns. It's just that KIPP looks nothing like any of our schools here in Albemarle County. And so we need someone on the school board who has an understanding of what public education is really like here for our teachers and for our students.
Right on, and I agree. You know, the real big knock with the way that charter schools separate kids and segregate kids, not necessarily racially, but they segregate kids by the kids who have the more involved parents and end up being the best test takers are separated from the kids, right? They go into charter schools because your parent knew that there was a charter school opening and they knew that there was a lottery and they signed out all the papers just when you were in third or fourth grade or whatever, or second grade, and they got you into the school, but everybody else didn't. And so now you have a higher concentration of, you know, kids that don't end up being the best test takers because their parents, you know, were not on top of the whole charter school application. They're probably not as involved on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they have 3 jobs, or, you know, there's all kinds of situations. And so if the point of education reform is to equalize the performance of students and get rid of the achievement gap, we've only been making it worse. The achievement gap, you've been seeing, you know, great scores in charter schools, if we want to call that success, but it's come at the expense of the other schools. And so you just have a seesaw. It's just, you know, creating a worse imbalance. And so in that respect, they're failing their own stated goals of you know, reducing the achievement gap. And so it's great to have somebody, you know, talking about this in you know, school board meetings, or, you know, to be a candidate or to be elected in the school board. We'd really I think we could really use those teacher voices that know. And
well, the achievement gap, as you were talking about, is definitely a part of this race. You know, Albemarle County schools are really highly ranked in the state. You were probably in the top 10 school systems in the entire state of Virginia. That doesn't mean that we're doing everything perfectly, and we do have a very obvious achievement gap here. The superintendent this year started a brand new initiative called the Equity and Access Initiative, and she has really made it the focus to try and address the achievement gap. And so there are different ways that that is done. There is no silver bullet for that, though. There's not ever been one single way where we can completely erase the achievement gap anywhere in the country. I don't know a single community that can say they have no achievement gap at all. And I think that what we really need to acknowledge when we're talking about the achievement gap is that it has come from 200 plus years of social and economic injustice for people of color in our country. And so we can make many, many changes, and we can have all the initiatives in the world inside our school building, but until we change the economic and social problems that are keeping people of color down in our society, then we're going to still be struggling uphill as far as trying to get all of our students to achieve at the same level.
Right. I mean, that is what we see with a, you know, everybody talks about Finland, this because they have the highest scores on the international test. And what are they doing? You know, what's the secret? Well,
I did study abroad in Finland.
Oh yeah, right. So and they were also in the Michael Moore movie, so people got to see a little bit about how it works. Number one, they have, basic, economic, fairness. There's like a real safety net there where we don't have such, highs and lows. But in schools, when a school is not doing as well as other schools, instead of taking away resources from it and punishing them because they didn't make, a certain amount of progress, they give them extra resources and they say, let's figure out what the problem is here. And they believe that equity across the whole system, raises all boats. And I think that is something that we don't have here in America, because we have this attitude. I mean, even if you're not rich, but you're buying into the system, like this, I got mine. So if you're middle class and you're in the suburbs and your kid's doing okay, then you don't really care about whether or not there's charter schools in New York City, or you don't really care what's going on in other places. But this is a great example when you're looking at things nationwide or statewide or district wide, that there are resources, and that if we only distributed them fairly, that the kids on the low end who maybe don't have such a great family life would be able to use school as the stepping stone to a better life. And that was supposed to be the American dream, that doesn't seem to be happening right now.
Right. I have found just through the process of running for office that so much of what I have to do is educating voters. I'm not just educating students anymore. I'm not just a teacher in a classroom. There are so many people that don't really understand what the big issues are. It's almost you can't see the forest for the trees. And so what's going on nationally is really important. What Betsy DeVos does is really important. Even though it may not affect me today, it's going to affect my children. It's going to affect our public schools for a long, long time. And so that's why we have to march at the March for Public Education. And that's why we have to speak out every time we get a chance to talk about these things. And there are a lot of teachers, too, who I've worked with over the years who really don't know about educational policy and the changes that could potentially be coming. So I've done a lot of educating. I've talked to a ton of voters about this, and a lot of them are just completely taken aback, completely surprised. They just don't know about it. And what we have to acknowledge too is that education is my passion, it's my thing, but it's not everyone's thing. And so I care about it and I can talk about it every day, all day, but that doesn't mean that everyone else is going to listen to me talk about it every day, all day. So when I'm talking with someone and I only get 5 minutes to talk about things, I really have to focus on what is my main goal, which is that we need more teachers to leave the classroom and become involved in politics at all levels. You just had a former teacher, Pellegrino, right?
Christine Pellegrino, I met with her on Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, really? Good.
Yeah, we had a great talk.
Yeah, but so I hate to say leave the classroom, because we do need really great teachers in the classroom. But the point is that if teachers don't make it a priority to stand up for the things that they know are right, then we will continue to have school boards that are filled with lawyers and doctors and policy analysts and all of these people who really don't know what it's like when we talk about increasing class size to save money. It's not just a number on a form. When you're turning my class from 29 to 30, that's one more parent conference. That's one more copy that always has to be made. That's one more student that I have to find a chair and a desk for. It multiplies by so much. So, teachers everywhere, if you hear this and you've ever thought about running for office, I really, really think you should do it.
Right, answer the call. Here in New York, we had a special assembly seat in Long Island. And a teacher was able to win the Democratic nomination because the other guy got indicted.
Oh my!
So it was kind of a perfect storm. But she ended up winning in a landslide. She won by 16 points in a district that went for Trump by 20 points.
Wow.
So that's a huge turnaround. And the reason, she said, and I want to ask you about this in your district, is because she didn't make it, a partisan thing. She made it an issues-based campaign, and she already had a track record because Long Island is ground zero of the opt-out movement. In New York State, if people don't know, 1 out of 5 families in the entire state have been refusing the test, the Common Core test here,
Wow.
for multiple years. This is going to be the 3rd year. And so that is like sustained protest, and it's, right wing and left wing. It's Republicans, Democrats, conservative liberals. They think that the tests are, junk science, and that they do not benefit the children or the schools. And so she was an activist with a bit of a following in her home district, and those are the groups that came out to support her when it came time, and they knocked on doors, they made calls, and she ended up winning by way more than anybody ever suspected, which is a great example. So now she has been embraced by the statewide teachers union. She's been embraced by the party. They travel her around to make speeches. She's just she's just a regular person, not a career politician. She is a 20-year school teacher, so she knows how kids learn, and she knows how to present information and all that. But you could not have picked like a more typical mom or a more typical person. And so the
Yeah.
lesson there is that it's a great idea, and if you have to leave the classroom, but you're going into your state legislature to stare down these puppets and these corrupt officials, and these people that are just working for the Wall Street class, it's well worth it. So I applaud what you're doing, and we really hope you win your race, and that and then think about other things in the future where you can have even more impact, because as a teacher and also as an activist, um, most people don't get involved, and when they get into the voting booth, they're not even sure which option is best because they haven't done the homework and the research. So it's really important what you're doing, and it is such a challenge, like you say, to get the people the vital information that they need in a short amount of time, so that they just walk away understanding why this is so important.
Yeah, yeah. It's really hard to run. I'm not gonna lie, it's not been easy. I've spent so much time asking questions, researching, having to find out even how to qualify to run for office, and getting petition signatures, and sending out press releases. And you really do have to form a close community around you of people who are willing to help. And it's not partisan. Education, every single child in our school, is those children are not Democrats or Republicans. They're just children, and they all need to be educated with high quality teaching and high quality curriculum and all of the resources that they need. So I do, when I'm talking to voters, sometimes people have asked me, well, what are you? Are you a Democrat or a Republican? And I will say, this is an independent race, so I'm an independent as far as the ballot is concerned, but I do typically vote for Democrats. With that said, I agree with Republicans on a couple things, especially the person who is leaving the seat, the incumbent. She and I had a great conversation about fiscal responsibility, because I think that a lot of times the budgets are made without really asking the teachers what the money should go toward. And there's this great concept called participatory budgeting. I don't know if you've heard of it. And they've started a movement in Charlottesville that allows the community to get a certain amount of money from the budget, and they get to determine how they're going to spend it. And I think that participatory budgeting would really work in the schools, not a huge part of our budget, but to allow each school to set the autonomy and the independence for us to say, here is a certain amount of money, you get to decide, teachers.
More arts, more arts.
Yeah, yeah. What the money is needed for. Instead of it all coming down from the top,
Right.
let's have some of the decisions coming from the bottom. And that really would make parents, students, and teachers feel really empowered as far as decision making is concerned.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we will be wrapping up, but let's just try to get a sense for people in your district. You know your district. So what is the general pro-Trump, anti-Trump, or more aware of Betsy DeVos than they were of former education secretaries because she's a billionaire and she was so controversial. But what is the electorate like in your district, and you know, what kind of challenges will that pose?
In general, Charlottesville and Albemarle County is a pretty liberal area. We are, I would say, 75 to 80% Democrats in the county. So I think that the Republicans here are more moderate Republicans. They're not actually super conservative. With that said, we do have party contingency in the community. But I think that everyone is concerned. Even the Republicans that I have talked to are really concerned about the changes that are being made and just the unpredictability of this situation. The proposed budget with the Medicaid cuts, you know, that if that stays, is gonna really damage all of our community. It'll damage our special education services and so many members of the community who rely on the Medicaid expansion and Medicaid Part B, I believe it is. But yeah, it's not just Democrats who are really concerned, it's everybody.
Right. I mean, it's if you're a special ed parent, then you all of a sudden those walls break down. But for folks that might not be aware, Donald Trump's education budget has proposed $9 billion in cuts. Part of that, and also the Trump Care proposal, which did not pass, but it's also not, you know, completely going away, did reduce Medicaid funding, which in some cases does filter down to schools where Medicaid pays for special services for kids that are disabled, occupational therapy, things like that. And you know, it might seem like it doesn't affect you because you might not have that kind of a kid, but for those families that do, and you know, to lose these services that they've been getting, that really tries to make it so that your kid can go through, you know, school and have a normal education. For that to just disappear, it's like unconscionable. You know, there are a lot of things that do end up hitting home, whether you're Republican or Democrat, and you know, just being aware of it is job one. So you know, visibility is good. It would be great if the up-ticket races were exposing these, you know, debates a little bit more too. And then that brings us to the question of the media in your area. Do you have a decent hometown paper? Is there, you know, reporting going on in your district? What's the state of play?
We have a paper called the Daily Progress, and they work in partnership on education issues with a website called Seville Tomorrow. They focus on education, politics, the economy, a couple other things, Seville Tomorrow. But so when they write an article for Seville Tomorrow, then it also gets published in the next Daily Progress. I think that they are in general pretty on top of things. I think that they don't talk about the impact locally of what the state and national decisions will mean. But they do focus a lot on local stories.
Right. So do they get down to school board races, and will there be maybe any debates between you and your opponent? Also, is there any kind of reporting on, you know, like big donations that might come, you know, through for you know, for somebody where people can see like, hey, you know, some big you know, charter school organization just made a huge payment to this candidate. I mean, do they really get down to the detail like that?
Not yet. There will be a debate. Not a debate. They call it a forum.
Right.
A little bit closer to the election. They have reported on the candidate finances, but really kind of skimmed over the board finances because, you know, we are the lowest level of the races. There haven't been any big significant donations from any organizations that I can see. You know, I don't think that my opponent is being pushed forward by TFA or by charter management organizations. And until the next financial report comes out in mid-September, we won't really know. It doesn't seem like she's doing a ton of fundraising, but you also don't need a ton of money for a small local race like this. So I have been really pushing fundraising just from small local donors, trying to get, you know, $10 at a time, $20 at a time. And I've had over 65 different people give me donations, which is huge, because if someone's willing to give me $10, that means that they are putting their money behind me. And that's a huge vote of confidence for me. So yeah, I think the local media is trying to cover all of the races, but as I said, when we're talking about governor, lieutenant governor, and all of the other races on the ballot, school board is not a priority for them.
Right. I mean, but it will be there at the bottom, and so
that's right.
You know, that's where your yard signs come in, because they're looking at two names, you know, and it doesn't even have a party, you know, next to it. So, you know, anything that, you know, that breaks into their news, anything that breaks into their consciousness, you know, something that they hear about, a friend of a friend. I mean, it's one of those things. But there will be people that, you know, that are filling out these ballots, and they get down to that, and
you won't know.
You know, right. I mean, they might not, you know, some people might not, you know, check off either box if they're not educated about the race. And some people might just go by, you know, the last name, you know, like if they're like, you know, identity politics matches the ethnicity sounding. I mean, people do this, you know.
Yeah.
So it would be really great if you can just, you know, bring education into, you know, the awareness, the consciousness of the voter, you know, and along that, you know, your platform. And I did ask you before if you had made any kind of connections with other candidate organizations like Our Revolution or Indivisible, or some of these anti-Trump things that are forming a little more recently. But here in New York, we also have Working Families Party. You know, the other third-party lines. Is there anything like that that might be able to give you a leg up?
So I have applied for an endorsement from the Network for Public Education Action.
Oh, that's Carol Burris and Diane Ravitch.
Diane Ravitch, yes. I haven't heard yet if I'm going to get their endorsement, but that would be huge for me, because I feel like that would give the name recognition and push this forward to a huge crowd of people, that this race is important and why. I have gotten an endorsement from Susan Platt, who was a candidate for lieutenant governor in the primary, and that was huge. Her endorsement was really, really supportive. So the VEA, which is the Virginia State Teachers Association, is sending out their questionnaires next week, and I will be requesting their endorsement as well. And I think that really that would be very valuable in a community like Albemarle County, where UVA is the largest employer, and then the county schools are, I believe, second after them. Education really runs this community, and so to have the VEA endorsement would be really big for me. So that is something I'm working for.
Right. All right, so if anybody out there is listening, or if you're accessing this and you're in Albemarle County, be on the lookout for that, and also try to tell your friends. If you're in other places, please look at the example of teachers running for office, and you know, maybe benefit from some of the people that have already done it. There is a little bit of a learning curve, and there's definitely things to know and look out for. So hopefully we touched on those things, and please be involved, run, and you know, try to improve what we've got going on here in America, because, you know, in education it is a war, and it's been going on for at least 15 years. You know, they've really been putting on the accelerator, Democrats and Republicans. You know, privatization. You know, it's the rich against the poor, however you want to say it, but it's a mess. And so we're happy to hear that there are bright, informed people like Mary that are running, and hopefully she'll win and make an impact in your local school board.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I do want to say to any teachers thinking about running for office, if they want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you about it and answer any questions. If I can help, I will.
Okay, so and you're reachable on Facebook. There's like Mary with a 4, and then it's Albemarle County's.
Yeah, on Facebook, Mary for Albemarle Schools. It's the number 4, and Albemarle is ALBEMARLE.
Albemarle.
Yes.
So right,
and then
okay,
that's
guys.
also my website, maryforalbemarleschools.com.
Great. All right, so
And
people can reach out.
I'm at Mary McIntyre.
Oh, and your Twitter's at Mary McIntyre. That's McIntyre, right?
Yes.
Great. All right. So thanks a lot, and we'll try to keep in touch as the November 7th or November 8th.
November 7th.
November 7th. Primary general election nears, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks a lot.